I opened the safe and found my father's handwriting. My name written clearly on the first page. 2 days later, my mother handed me a different will and smiled as if she hadn't just stolen my future. She said, "Some things shouldn't go to you, Rachel." I still don't know whether she was proud or ashamed. My name is Rachel Morgan, and for as long as I can remember, my father's workshop smelled like oil and lemon oil polish. He had calloused hands and a laugh that ricocheted off the rafters of the warehouse, and he taught me how to read ledgers before he taught me to cook. We were not flashy people. Dad built Morgan Freight and Logistics from a rusted pickup and a single county contract. Mom, Carolyn Morgan, kept the home clean and the image cleaner. Casseroles for neighbors, manicured nails at community luncheons, and a smile that made people trust her. We were a small American success story until the night a hospital bed took Dad's breath away. Now I sit in my old bedroom, lights low, rain pattering on the window, the house too quiet, and think about all the things that changed in the days after he was gone. There's a cinematic weight to this kind of silence. The refrigerator hums like a clock counting down. A lamp casts a single hard circle on the floor, and every familiar object feels like a memory relabeled by someone else. Dad always said, "If you ever need the keys to the company, Rachel, they're yours." He told me this not as a wish but as an arrangement. One employee, one daughter who learned the routes as a teenager, who could recite freight schedules from memory, and who knew how to calm a driver after a blown tire at midnight. My brother Marcus was different. He had charisma and a knack for empty promises. He charmed investors with big talk and wore suits that suggested other people paid for them. Marcus was 2 years older, more reckless, and somehow always forgiven for being late. After the funeral, everything was unspooled. People from the board who once called my father by his first name began using formal titles and polite distance. Mom's condolences were immaculate, silver teardrop earrings, perfect hair, but they didn't reach her eyes. A week later, in the dining room where Dad once cleared his plate and laughed too loud, Mom set a stack of papers on the table and asked us both to sit. She laid out a will, clean, notarized, framed by legal verbosity. Marcus was designated CEO with majority ownership. I was given a quarterly advisor clause and a token stock certificate as though that would settle who I was in the company. Something cold, like winter wind through the old drafty windows, slid across the kitchen floor. I stared at the pages and recognized the rhythm of Dad's handwriting. It wasn't his. "Dad wrote this, Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. He said a lot of things when he was tired," Mom interjected smoothly. "We had to make decisions. Marcus has the experience to lead." It wasn't a conversation so much as a performance where the lines were practiced and the actors knew their cues. Marcus smiled like a man who had been promoted by fate rather than forged by deceit. I left the table with a paperweight clutched in my hand and the taste of iron in my mouth. 2 nights later I couldn't sleep. The house felt like a ship without a captain. Doors rattling, shadows moving differently. I went into Dad's study, a room where the sun used to find his face at dawn and where blueprints and coffee rings lived in harmony. There, under a ledger marked "Do Not Remove," I found the old safe, Dad's safe, where he kept the things he deemed too important for casual eyes. He'd shown it to me once when I was 16 and whispered, "If anything happens to me, Rachel, check in here." My hands were clumsy, but the combination came back to me like muscle memory. The safe opened and the smell of old paper and Dad's cologne. He always kept a bottle tucked inside, washed over me. Inside lay a sealed envelope with my name in Dad's unmistakable cursive. My heartbeat was loud enough to drown everything else. I slid the envelope out like someone handling a relic and unfolded the pages inside. It was the original will. It named Rachel Morgan as majority owner and gave Marcus a modest stipend. It entrusted the board to Dad's longtime partner and instructed that Mom receive financial security, but no corporate power. The language was firm and unequivocal. Dad's wishes were clear. I drove straight to the dining room, my shoes slapping on the pavement, rain splattering the windshield like tiny accusations. I burst into the house and threw the paper on the table. "Mom! Marcus! This is the real will." Marcus's face didn't change. Mom's smile remained. The atmosphere thickened with the kind of silence that transforms into accusation. "My God," Marcus said, with the slow condescension of someone watching a child misplace their toys. "Where did you get that?" "You hid it," I said. Dad hid things. He trusted me. Mom's hands, usually immaculate, clutched her napkin. She folded it deliberately. Rachel, we made practical choices. Running a company isn't sentimental. Marcus will do better with it. You forged Dad's signature. The words spilled before I could stop them. Mom looked at me with a calm so cold it felt carved. Don't be ridiculous. I felt heat and cold at the same time. Heat of fury, cold of betrayal. Dad's handwriting screamed in my memory in ways that no courtroom would ever contest. I had proof. I had the sealed envelope and the original will. I had the truth sitting flat on the dining room table. Marcus laughed, short, brittle. You're being dramatic. Your grief is making you look terrible, Ratch. My voice rose, and for the first time in my life I heard the tremor of something fierce. You stole everything. Together. Mom's eyes narrowed. We corrected his error. You call stealing correction? The words landed like a blow, and the house seemed to inhale and hold its breath. What followed was a slow-motion unraveling. I was escorted out of the office I had helped organize since I was a teenager. Badges were deactivated. Meetings were scheduled without my knowledge. Co-workers I'd trained avoided me in the hallways, their smiles brittle and rehearsed. Marcus posted a photo on social media. Him shaking hands with a board member. Captioned, "Ready for the next chapter." Comments poured in. Support, condolences, congratulations. Mom sent out a PR message to the company that was measured and tone perfect. We are united and moving forward. I was not moving forward. I was being erased. Every legal conversation began with the word practicality. Lawyers, suit-clad and polite, told me emotions clouded judgment, that litigation would be long, that families breaking apart over money was regrettable but common. Friends called and advised me to be cautious. Some whispered that I should consider letting it go to preserve what remained of the family. But letting it go meant letting Dad's wishes be trampled. Letting it go meant letting a lie stand as the story of his life. So I hired a forensic document examiner, an older woman who smelled faintly of tea and had eyes that looked like they had read more signatures than most people had read books. She took the forged will, the original, and sat with them under a bright lamp like a detective. Rachel, she said after an hour. Someone took care to copy characteristic loops and pressure points, but we can prove the forgery. It's not just style. There's pressure discrepancies, inconsistency, and evidence of mechanical tracing. Relief is a strange thing, equal parts hope and new fear. I filed a motion to contest the will. Marcus responded with accusations of instability and opportunism. Mom issued a statement expressing shock at the public airing of private family matters. Board members who had automatically supported Marcus when his suit looked better than his resume began to waver when subpoenas arrived and the accountant's records were requested. It was messy. It was public. It was the kind of humiliation that lives and breathes. And through it all, Mom never apologized. Her expression softened at cameras but not in private. She continued to host charity luncheons and occasionally asked how I was, asking like she asked neighboring women about the weather. Perfunctory, distant. The courtroom smelled of varnish and cold metal. People I had known for years sat in the gallery. Drivers, warehouse foremen, old clients. Eyes curved with sympathy like shadows leaning forward. My mother sat straight as a statue, coral lipstick precise. Marcus looked uncomfortable in his tailored suit. The judge read the evidence with a tired but impartial cadence. I watched the forensic expert demonstrate tracing marks on an overhead projector, the light magnifying the deception like a cut under a microscope. I watched Dad's handwriting split into components. The way he dotted I's in a hurry, the curl on a final G that climbed like a staircase. I watched Mom's counsel attempt explanations that unraveled under cross-examination. At one point my chest felt like an anvil. My hands trembled. There is a moment in any fight for truth where you realize you can no longer be half in the world of acceptance. It is the moment you either surrender or rise. I rose. The judge's voice eventually broke through. This court finds clear and convincing evidence that the later will was forged, and that the original will represents the testator's intent. The words landed like a verdict in a film, dramatic and final. The courtroom gasped, some wept. Marcus's face went slack, then red, then pale. Mom's mask cracked in half a degree. I could see the seams where the practiced grace fell apart. Security escorted them out of the building, careful, almost ceremonial. While I tried to process the fact that my father's name would finally be honored on paper the way it had been in my blood, taking the helm after that was not a triumph. There were staff meetings where I had to explain logistics and apologize for the chaos. There were payroll recalibrations and shareholder calls. The office smelled of fresh coffee and anxious ambition. Dad's office still smelled like leftover cologne and old paper. His chair creaked the same way. The sun still cuts through the blinds in the mornings, but the hollow left by his absence remained unfillable. There is no corporate victory that stitches a father back into the small moments where he used to teach you to tie a knot or to hold a wrench. Mom left town after a few weeks, citing rest and reflection. Marcus found a job that paid well and kept him away from boardrooms. He sent perfunctory letters that read like postcards, polite but distant. I sat alone in the warehouse one evening, the fluorescent lights humming, and watched a loading dock door rise and fall like a metronome. A longshoreman I had trained years ago walked past and gave me a small nod. That gesture felt like a benediction. The legal victory did not repair every fracture. My family's image as a unit was gone. My mother's face at gatherings was a place of absence. But something else grew in the wake of betrayal, a quiet clarity. Dad's legacy became more than a ledger entry. It became a responsibility to the people who loaded and unloaded trucks in the rain and the men and women who had given their years to a company that had been, for them, a lifeline. I found fierce joy in returning pay that had been delayed, in rehiring a dispatcher who had been let go unfairly, in instituting a coaching program for drivers. Justice was not a movie applause. It was a steady, small rebuilding. I finally learned that loyalty is louder than family. Money didn't change me, only the people around me. Some endings are painful but necessary. Tell me what you would have done. If you like this story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Reddit Diaries. Help us hit 1,000 subscribers. Your support keeps real stories alive.